A billionaire watched a single black mother return her son's formula at checkout. Her quiet apology would lead him to a 15-year-old letter that would change both their lives forever. Rachel Cherry had counted the money 3 times before she ever left her apartment. She knew every dollar, every coin. She had to. At 29, mathematics had become a survival skill, not a subject. But standing under the brutal fluorescent lights of Save Mart on a Wednesday evening, the numbers refused to cooperate. The cashier's voice was flat, bored, mechanical. 47.23. Rachel's fingers gripped the edge of the counter. In her other arm, 8-month-old Marcus squirmed, oblivious to the crisis unfolding around him. He was a beautiful child. Round cheeks, curious brown eyes, and a smile that made every sacrifice worth it. But right now, he needed something she couldn't give him. The special formula. The only kind his sensitive stomach could tolerate. She'd watched the price creep up week by week, dollar by dollar, as if the universe were testing exactly how much a mother could endure. "I'm sorry," Rachel whispered, the words like glass in her throat. "I need to return this one." She slid the blue canister across the counter with trembling hands. Behind her, she could feel the weight of impatient stares, hear the soft sighs, sense the silent judgment of people who would never understand what it meant to choose between your baby's comfort and keeping the lights on. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. 2 years ago, she'd been Nurse Rachel Cherry, pediatrics, helping other people's children heal. She'd been good at it, great even, but childcare cost more than her salary. The system she'd worked within had failed her the moment she needed it most. Now she was just another invisible woman in a checkout line, apologizing for being poor. A few yards away, pretending to browse magazines near the entrance, stood a man in faded jeans and a gray jacket. His name was Jacob Jackson, though the casual clothes and tired posture meant no one in Save Mart recognized him. To them, he was just another shopper, not the tech billionaire whose face occasionally appeared in Forbes, not the philanthropist whose foundation had donated millions to various causes. Just a dad, holding his 5-year-old daughter's hand. "Daddy," Emma whispered, tugging his sleeve. Her voice carried that specific clarity only children possess, the ability to cut through pretense straight to truth. "Why does that lady look so sad?" Jacob looked up from the magazine he wasn't reading. He watched Rachel gather her remaining groceries, a loaf of bread, a small bag of rice, a jar of generic peanut butter, into a single plastic bag. Her shoulders were curved inward, as if she were trying to take up less space in the world. "She's having a hard day, sweetheart," he said softly, but something in his chest pulled tight. This wasn't just a hard day. This was a life, and he was about to do something about it. What Jacob didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know yet, was that this moment had been 15 years in the making, that Rachel's story and his were already written in the same chapter, inked in blood and sand half a world away. He was about to discover that some debts are inherited, and some acts of kindness are simply destiny collecting what's owed. Before we dive into Rachel and Jacob's story, I want to welcome you here. Whether you're folding laundry, driving home from work, or just trying to quiet your mind before sleep, thank you for letting me share this journey with you. This is a story about invisible debts and unexpected grace, about how a single moment in a grocery store can unlock secrets that span generations. It's about 2 people who thought they were strangers, only to discover their lives had been intertwined long before they ever met. So settle in. Let the world outside fade for a while, because what happened next in that Save Mart would set in motion events that neither Rachel nor Jacob could have imagined. Let's begin. The hum of fluorescent lights was the soundtrack to Rachel's humiliation. That low, persistent buzz filled the cavernous space of Save Mart, bouncing off linoleum floors and metal shelves. It was the sound of indifference, the world's way of saying it would keep spinning whether she could afford baby formula or not. Rachel stood at register 7, her son Marcus balanced on her hip. At 8 months old, he was getting heavy. Her arm ached from holding him, but the alternative, setting him down, letting him crawl on this dirty floor, was unthinkable. She was many things now, broke, exhausted, desperate. But she was still his mother, still his protector. 4723, the cashier repeated, this time with an edge of impatience. Kevin, his name tag announced, was maybe 19. Acne scars dotted his jawline. He had the glazed expression of someone who'd scanned thousands of items that day and saw her as just another transaction, just another delay keeping him from his break. Rachel's hands fumbled with her purse, that ancient faux leather thing that had been her grandmother's. Inside, 2 $20 bills, 2 ones, and a handful of quarters she'd scrounged from the car's cup holders. $42.75. She'd counted it 3 times before leaving home, had calculated everything down to the penny. But the formula had gone up. Again. Of course it had. Her voice caught. She cleared her throat, tried again. I'm so sorry. I need to return this. She reached for the canister of formula, that blue cylinder of hope, of Marcus sleeping peacefully through the night instead of crying with stomach pain. Her fingers touched the cool metal, and for a moment, she couldn't let go. Behind her, someone sighed. Loud. Pointed. Come on, a male voice muttered. Rachel's cheeks burned. She forced her hand to push the canister across the counter toward Kevin, who accepted it with the same bored expression he'd maintained throughout. This happened every day in his line. The quiet apology, the return necessities, the shame of being poor in a place designed for people with money. That brings you to $31.47, Kevin announced. Rachel counted out her bills with shaking hands. She would have enough for the bread, the rice, the peanut butter. Enough to keep them fed for a few more days until her next shift at the diner. She'd figure out the formula situation later. She always did. The fluorescent lights of Save Mart cast harsh shadows across the parking lot as Rachel adjusted Marcus against her hip, her empty canvas bag hanging limp from her shoulder. The bus wouldn't arrive for another 20 minutes. Excuse me. Rachel turned. The man from inside, tall, dark hair graying at the temples, expensive jacket, approached carrying 2 grocery bags. Her defenses rose instantly. I know. He stopped a respectful distance away. But your son does. Rachel's grip tightened on Marcus. I don't accept charity from strangers. Jacob Jackson. He shifted both bags to one arm, extending his hand. When she didn't take it, he continued gently. And I'm a father too. My daughter's 5. Emma. He gestured toward a Mercedes, where a little girl pressed her face against the window, waving. She asked me why you looked so sad. Something in Rachel's chest cracked. She blinked hard. The formula's in here, Jacob said, setting the bags down carefully. And some other things I noticed you put back. Chicken, vegetables, diapers. He paused. I'm not trying to insult you. I'm trying to help. Marcus whimpered, rooting against Rachel's shoulder. The formula. God, the formula. Why? Her voice barely whispered. Jacob's eyes, kind eyes, tired eyes, met hers. Because someone helped me once, when I needed it most. Because my daughter will grow up knowing kindness isn't optional. He stepped back. And because it's cold, you've got a baby, and that bus is late more often than not. Rachel stared at the bags. Her pride screamed to refuse. Her son's hunger screamed louder. "Let me give you a ride home," Jacob said quietly. "You don't even know me." "No, but I know what desperation looks like, and I know that love." He nodded toward Marcus. "That's the kind that moves mountains." 10 minutes later, Rachel sat in leather seats that probably cost more than her monthly rent, directing Jacob through streets that grew progressively darker, more desperate. Emma chattered from her car seat about her princess backpack, while Marcus finally dozed, full belly from the bottle Rachel had made with trembling hands. Jacob carried the groceries upstairs without being asked, his expensive shoes treading carefully over stained carpet. Inside her spotless studio, his eyes swept the space, not judging, she realized, but understanding. They lingered on the photos, her in navy scrubs, her father in desert camouflage. "Military?" Jacob asked softly. "Army medic, Sergeant David Cherry." Rachel's throat tightened. "He died in Iraq when I was 19. Something flickered across Jacob's face. Recognition? Pain? But when he spoke, his voice held only respect. "A hero." "Yes." The word cost her everything. At the door, Jacob paused. "You're a good mother, Rachel. Don't let anyone, especially yourself, tell you otherwise." Then he was gone, and Rachel locked the door, sliding down against it as silent tears finally came. She didn't see Jacob sit in his car for 10 full minutes, staring at nothing, seeing everything. Jacob couldn't sleep. It was 2 in the morning, and he stood in his home office overlooking the glittering city below. The lights stretched to the horizon, thousands of lives, thousands of stories. Somewhere out there, in a neighborhood those lights barely reached, Rachel Cherry was probably awake too, worried about tomorrow's problems. He'd driven her home the night before, watched her climb 3 flights of stairs in a building that should have been condemned, seen the photo on her bookshelf. A young black man in desert camouflage, his smile proud and strong. Something about that photo had nagged at him all night. Can't sleep either. His assistant David appeared in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of coffee. At 62, David had been with the Jackson family for 30 years. He knew when Jacob needed company. "I need you to find out about someone," Jacob said quietly, discreetly. By noon the next day, a thin folder sat on Jacob's desk. He opened it with hands that trembled slightly. Rachel Marie Cherry, age 29, former pediatric nurse at Mercy General Hospital, left employment 18 months ago. Current employment, part-time server at Rosie's Diner. Father, Sergeant David Michael Cherry, U.S. Army, deceased 2015. Served 2 tours in Iraq, 2006-2008. Jacob's breath caught. Iraq, 2006-2008. The same years, the same war. He stood abruptly, walked to the mahogany cabinet in the corner of his office. Inside, in a leather box he hadn't opened in years, were his brother Chris's letters. 23 of them, written in pencil on whatever paper Chris could find. Some stained with sand, some with what might have been blood. Jacob's hands shook as he found the one dated March 15, 2007. "Dear Jake, I'm alive because of a medic named Cherry. We were on patrol when the IED hit our Humvee. Fire everywhere. I couldn't move. Something had me pinned. The smoke was so thick I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I was sure I was dead. Then this medic came through the flames. Didn't hesitate, didn't flinch. Just grabbed me and pulled. I must have weighed 200 pounds with all my gear, but he dragged me out like I was nothing. Took shrapnel in his arm doing it, but he didn't stop. Patched me up right there, while rounds were still coming in. Sergeant Cherry. That's his name. I asked him why he risked it. You know what he said? Because you're somebody's brother, somebody's son, and they deserve to have you come home. I'm writing this because of him, Jake. Remember that name, David Cherry. I owe him everything." Jacob sank into his chair, the letter trembling in his hands. Chris had died 3 years later in a senseless car accident on a rainy highway. But Jacob had gotten 3 more years with his baby brother. 3 more Christmases, 3 more summers, 3 more chances to say, "I love you," because of Sergeant David Cherry, because of Rachel's father. And now David's daughter was returning baby formula at a grocery store checkout. "No," Jacob whispered to the empty room. "Not on my watch." He reached for his phone. Diner when her phone rang. She almost didn't answer. Unknown number, probably spam, but something made her swipe to accept. "Is this Rachel Cherry?" A woman's voice, professional, warm. "Yes." "My name is Patricia Morales. I'm the HR director at Jackson Foundation. We're launching a new community health initiative, and your background came highly recommended. Would you be available for an interview?" Rachel nearly dropped the phone. I'm sorry. What? "We're looking for a program director. Someone with clinical experience who understands the barriers families face in accessing health care. Your nursing background and..." A meaningful pause. "Your personal experience make you an ideal candidate." Rachel's mind raced. She hadn't worked as a nurse in 18 months. Her license was still active. Barely. But who would hire her now? And how did they even know about her? "Ms. Cherry, are you still there?" Yes, I'm interested." The interview was scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. Rachel had to trade shifts, beg her neighbor to watch Marcus, and iron the one professional blouse she still owned. She spent 3 nights reviewing medical journals, practicing answers to questions she anticipated. What she didn't anticipate was the building itself. The Jackson Foundation occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower downtown. The lobby was all marble and modern art. Rachel felt like an imposter the moment she stepped inside. Patricia met her with a warm handshake and led her to a bright conference room. 3 other people will join us: our medical advisor, our community outreach coordinator, and our founder. The interview went well. Rachel found her confidence as she talked about pediatric care, about the families who fell through the cracks, about children who went without because their parents had to choose between medicine and rent. She knew this world. She'd lived it. Then the door opened. Rachel's heart stopped. Jacob Jackson walked in, dressed in a crisp navy suit, looking nothing like the tired man in jeans from the grocery store. But it was him. Same kind eyes, same gentle presence. "Ms. Cherry," he said, extending his hand with a slight smile. "We meet again." She could barely breathe. "Mr. Jackson, I didn't realize that the man who bought you formula is also the man interviewing you?" His smile widened slightly. "Life has interesting timing." The professional questions continued for another 20 minutes, but then Patricia and the others excused themselves, leaving Rachel alone with Jacob. "I need to show you something," he said quietly. From a leather folder, he pulled out an old letter, its edges worn soft with handling. As Rachel read her father's name, Sergeant David Cherry, the words blurred. By the time she finished reading about how her father had saved Chris Jackson's life, tears were streaming down her face. "My father," she whispered. "He saved your brother. He gave me 3 more years with Chris," Jacob said, his own eyes bright. "I can never repay that debt to your father, Rachel, but I can honor it. This isn't charity. You're qualified. You're perfect for this role, but you should know why I'm offering it." Rachel looked at him, really looked at him. Not a billionaire, not a benefactor, Just a man trying to honor a promise written in blood and sand 15 years ago. "When do I start?" she asked. 6 months transformed Rachel's life into something she'd stopped believing possible. The Community Health Initiative had enrolled 237 families, connecting them with preventive care, nutrition programs, and pediatric services. Rachel worked 12-hour days and loved every minute. This was nursing again, but bigger, strategic, meaningful. And there was Jacob. Professional meetings that lingered over cold coffee, working dinners where Emma and Marcus built block towers while Rachel and Jacob built something neither would name. His hand on her shoulder when the data proved their model worked. Her laugh, the real one she'd forgotten she had, at his terrible dad jokes. "You're glowing," her assistant Maria said one afternoon. Rachel ducked her head, smiling at her computer. Then the email arrived. "Emergency board meeting, Thursday, 2 p.m. Your attendance required." Victoria Ashford stood at the head of the conference table like a silver-haired executioner, her Chanel suit pristine, her smile venomous. "Ms. Cherry, your program shows interesting results." Victoria tapped a manicured nail against her folder. "Though the board has concerns about allocation efficiency and hiring practices." Rachel's stomach dropped. "Our outcomes exceed every projected metric." "Yes, how convenient." Victoria's eyes glittered. "Mr. Jackson, perhaps you'd like to explain why you hired someone with a 2-year employment gap and minimal administrative experience. Someone you met in a grocery store?" The room went silent. "Rachel earned this position through," Jacob started, "through your guilt." Victoria slid a paper across the table. Chris's letter from Iraq, the one Jacob had shown Rachel privately. "Your brother, her father. Very touching. But this foundation makes decisions based on merit, not sentiment." Rachel felt the walls closing in. Every board member's eyes on her. The charity case, the pity hire. "Is it true?" Board member Henderson asked quietly. "Did he hire you because of your father?" Rachel's professional mask cracked. "I've helped over 200 families. After Mr. Jackson gave you an opportunity no qualified candidate would have needed." Victoria leaned forward. "This isn't about your work, dear. It's about whether this foundation operates on nepotism and emotion or excellence and integrity." The vote was called. Review Rachel's position and potentially restructure the program under new leadership. Rachel stood, her chair scraping loud in the silent room. "I'll resign, effective immediately. The program matters more than my pride." "Rachel," Jacob's voice broke. She didn't look at him. Couldn't. If she did, she'd shatter completely. "The board will vote on your resignation," Victoria said smoothly. Meeting adjourned. In the parking garage, Rachel sat in her 9-year-old Honda, the one she could finally afford to repair, and let the tears come. She'd been a fool to believe she deserved this, to believe she deserved him. Her phone buzzed. Jacob's name. She turned it off and drove away. The emergency board meeting reconvened Monday morning. Rachel's resignation letter sat unread in Victoria's folder. Jacob had called every member personally over the weekend. "Before we vote," Jacob said, standing at the projector, "you'll hear the full story." The screen lit up. A photograph of a burning Humvee in Fallujah, 2007. "My brother Chris was trapped in that vehicle." Jacob's voice remained steady, but his knuckles whitened against the remote. "Sergeant David Cherry, Rachel's father, pulled him out under enemy fire. Chris survived. Got 3 more years of life before a drunk driver took him in 2010. He clicked to the next image. Chris's handwritten letter, blown up for the room to read. "The medic who saved me has a little girl back home. Rachel. I hope she grows up knowing her dad's a hero." "I didn't hire Rachel out of guilt," Jacob continued. "I hired her because she's lived what our families experience, because her clinical background is impeccable, Because in 6 months, she's built something that will outlast all of us. He looked at Victoria. Review the metrics yourself. Hospital readmission rates down 34%. Preventive care visits up 127%. Every dollar allocated has tripled in community health value. Henderson leaned forward. The Iraq connection is why I noticed her, not why I hired her. Jacob pulled out a second folder. Rachel doesn't know this, but I've been funding her program, separately from foundation resources, my personal wealth, every cent. If you question whether this program belongs here, the answer is simple. It doesn't need you, but you need it. He clicked to the final slide. Children's drawings, parent testimonials, Rachel laughing with Marcus at a community health fair. Vote however you want, Jacob said quietly. But know this, Rachel Cherry has more integrity in her little finger than most people have in their entire bodies. She tried to resign to protect this foundation's reputation. That's who she is. The vote was unanimous. Victoria's resignation was on Jacob's desk by noon, 2 years later. Why are we back here? Rachel asked, suspicious as Jacob pulled into Save Mart's parking lot. Marcus, now 3, bounced in his car seat. Mama, Emma says it's a prize. Jacob parked in the exact spot where they'd met. Emma scrambled out, practically vibrating with excitement, holding a poster board. What are you? Rachel started. Jacob knelt. Emma and Marcus flanked him, unfurling their sign in wobbly crayon letters. Will you marry my daddy? Rachel's hands flew to her mouth. You stood here once, ashamed and desperate, Jacob said, his voice thick. I stood over there, a stranger. But your father gave me my brother. You gave me purpose again. We gave each other a family. He pulled out a small box. Marry me, Rachel. Let's make this official. Yes, she whispered. God, yes. Marcus squealed. Emma shrieked. And in a grocery store parking lot under fluorescent lights, 2 broken people became beautifully whole. 3 months later, at the military memorial dedication, Rachel and Jacob placed flowers beneath a new plaque. In honor of those who served, Sergeant David Cherry and Lieutenant Christopher Jackson. Their sacrifice echoes through generations. Behind them, Marcus and Emma played tag between the monuments, their laughter carrying on the wind. Proof that love compounds interest forever, and some debts are best repaid by living fully.